Welcome, Power fans. We are back to cover episode 9 entitled A Last Gift. This one is a little interesting. As we know, let's address the elephant in the room. We do know the last two episodes leaked a couple days ago. So some of you will be coming here already having watched those, ready to discuss the developments. For those of you who held out and still haven't watched until the premiere tonight, kudos to you. Before we get started, I want to let you guys know I am going to have a special guest from the Power Cast to talk about the finale next week. I can't reveal that person just yet because there may be two cast members that I'm talking to next week. So as soon as I get confirmation, I will let you guys know. But be on the lookout for that. Of course, we've been covering the entire third season. So look back at the previous content. If you like, please subscribe and like, as we'll be covering the finale next week. So let's get right into it. Episode 9. This was a very jam-packed episode. A lot of stuff went on here. I'm really impressed that they got everything into this episode. Some things I didn't like, but overwhelmingly, I liked most of the episode. Let's get started with the big reveal, which was the kids, the Tejada kids, finally confronting Monet about all of her treachery that's went on this entire season. Now, I did predict that I thought Monet might die either in this episode or the finale because she had just been doing so much, killing her husband, setting up Drew's lover against his own family. But we got a confrontation that may actually lead to that in the finale. The kids basically told her that they know everything that's going on. Drew was, of course, very upset about what happened with Gordo. But the one that was most upset was Diana. We know Diana is daddy's girl. She loved Lorenzo, and she is just tired of Monet's treachery. What was really interesting about this is we know Mary does not have a lot of range as an actress, at least at this point, but I feel it worked in her favor with this portrayal of Monet. Monet wasn't trying to hear anything the kids were saying. She was just really wrapped up in her own pain and her own disrespect that she felt was done to her by Lorenzo. So she pretty much dismissed everything that they said about how could you kill our own father? How could you lie and manipulate us like this? All she cared about is what she perceived Lorenzo did to her. She was like, Lorenzo lied to me. He set up that big mural, and here you guys are defending him. What about me, essentially? And she kicked him out of the house. And it was a really good scene because it shows that even though she was in the wrong, children for the most part, they still cower a little bit when they get their mother's or their parents' wrath. Even if their parents are wrong, it's just that power dynamic of always wanting your parents' approval in some form or fashion. But with all that going on, it did kind of fulfill the prophecy that the ghost Lorenzo told Monet earlier in the season that these kids will never forgive you. So here is Monet alone in that big house with no allies anymore. So now we're going to see in the finale, where does she go from here? Does she try and get Tariq back in her good graces? That's pretty much the only person that she has at this point. She could try and make a play and go to the connect herself, which would be Monet, but that's going to be risky because she has no history with them. So we're going to see where Monet goes from here, but I'm still kind of sticking with I see Diana potentially being the one to really go against Monet as far as trying to take her out because she was the one that went full throttle and tried to actually physically fight Monet out of all the kids. She was the one that was most upset and she was the one that feels most aggrieved because she was the one that's never been truly accepted by Monet, even being her daughter. She dressed her down and said, your father really didn't love you. He sent you away to try and give you this new start, but what did he do? He had you slanging as soon as he had the chance to. So it was all a facade. It seems like she's almost jealous of the relationship that Diana had with her father. So a lot that's going on there. We'll see where that goes into in the finale. But I'm sticking with, Diana being really the one to possibly take out Monet if it gets to that point. But as of right now, Monet has no allies, finally, after all these seasons. So we'll see where that goes. My big disappointment this episode was really the handling of the Tejada and Castillo dynamic. I mentioned in the last episode, I felt that there was a lot of potential there to have a full out war and to have that bleed into next season. And really, I saw that potential in the matriarch, which is Evelyn. played by Lauren Velez. Lauren Velez is a really good actress. We've seen her in Dexter, New York Undercover, and I felt like her range would have been a good contrast with the colder, more calculating Monet and someone like Monet, excuse me, like Evelyn, that's a little bit more doting and loving of her children. Seeing the different dynamics of how they go about going to war would have been great to see, especially with this family history between these two. You know, we know about what happened with Evelyn's husband, Frank. Evelyn also possibly knowing what happened with Lorenzo and also losing her son. Uh, that would have been a great template for a war that we could see go on for maybe half a season or something like that. But unfortunately, I said my big fear was that they would kind of hot shot it and that wouldn't happen. And that's exactly what happened. Pretty much the Castillos were essentially cannon fodder. We got one good scene with Evelyn dressing down Monet about where's my son. You know, I know what you did. I know what you did to my husband. You know, I am not going to look the other way any further. I loved kind of the dynamic with Evelyn being more passionate and Monet being just cold and calculating and not giving an inch, you know, not admitting anything that she did wrong. I thought that was an excellent dynamic, and I was hoping that was going to set us up for a potential war that we would see over the course of at least a few episodes. But really, everything was wrapped up, what, about 10 minutes later? You know, the children, Kane and Drew, came up with a ingenious plan to do carbon monoxide poisoning in the Castillo establishment, basically kills everyone in there without anyone having to raise a gun, except for Evelyn, who hangs on a little bit, just long enough to tell Drew that it was your mother that set up my son and set everything in motion. And then that led to the big confrontation. So that was my big disappointment. I really wanted there to be some legs there with that. But unfortunately, the Castillos are all wiped out, including Evelyn. So that one scene of Evelyn and Monet going at each other is pretty much the extent of the war that we're going to get. And now they're completely out of the picture. Uh, let's go to Effie. Effie is really interesting to me. I want to make a little side note. Anytime you see Effie make this little face that you see here, her little sad face, take a drink. And I guarantee you by the end of whatever episode you're watching, you will be sloppy drunk. You know, she always has that kind of sad, forlorn face about, you know, nobody loves me, nobody understands me. And that's kind of the core of Effie's character, even with that outside demeanor being so tough. At the very end, she just wants to be loved and appreciated. She didn't get that from her parents. She got molested by her father or her father figure. So she's never had that genuine love until she got with Tariq, or so she thought, until Tariq learned about that betrayal. So she still wants that, you know, even after this whole setup that got her locked up. Who's the one person that she's asking for? She almost asked Davis, you know, what did Tariq say or what does Tariq feel about this? But she pulls herself back. Even when Kane comes there, you know, who's essentially supposed to be her new lover, Kane finds out that unfortunately he's the rebound. And really, she only cares about Tariq at this point, still, after everything that went down. So I said a couple episodes before, I'm feeling that this is pretty much a setup for Tariq kind of mirroring everything that his father did, that he can't escape his father's fate, even as much as he tries. He feels like he's smarter than his father, he's better, but he's really going down the same exact path that Ghost went down, even with the women. You know, I feel like Effie is his version of Tasha, his mother. I don't know who's the Angela figure yet. I'm leaning towards that being Lauren because Lauren is kind of so pure and naive to a fault about who Tariq really is, kind of like how Angela was naive to the real ghost. So if I had to pick, I'm leaning towards Lauren. Diana's still kind of a wild card, but I feel like Diana to him is just a pawn to be used. He used her as a pawn to get Effie jealous and upset and to also get the product moving. And we see later on when Diana comes to him for some answers, he basically brushes her off. She really lays her heart on the table and says, you know, if I moved out of state, you know, went down to Spelman or something, what would that lead with us? Would you come with me? Would you still want to do a relationship? And he's like, man, I got to take this call. Do what you got to do. So that lays it out clear what he really feels about Diana. So if I had to pick, I think Lauren is Tariq's Angela figure. But Effie is still, you know, she's going to have to trust someone at some point. I really think we haven't seen the last Effie and Tariq as far as that love triangle potentially goes. Kane knows where he stands with her now. So I feel like that's out of the picture at this point. So we'll see where Effie goes. She's hanging on to this whole no snitching. That's not in my character, but we're still early in the game. We know that the cops are playing games with her, not letting her make her phone call. So eventually, at some point, I do see her breaking if nothing changes. So we'll keep an eye on what Effie does for the finale. But right now, she's just feeling lonely and needs a hug, as we can see from her last image. Let's go to our good friend Saxe and the police. So yeah, Saxe is gone. He's out of here, but he is speaking from the grave. And like he said in one of his letters to Jenny, where I'm at now, I can play just as dirty and do more damage. And he was absolutely right. He sends out letters to everyone that he can, sowing discord. He sends a letter out to Monet, letting her know about, or letting her know about the potential betrayal with Tariq, so that's causing discord there. Sends a letter even out to Two-Bit with the address information for Tariq's mother, Tasha, putting her in danger. Tariq ends up losing his car. And Two-Bit, he's so funny to me. He kind of shows up like Broadman Martin. He just shows up a little bit, causes a little bit of discord, and just goes about his business again. I hope they keep that dynamic where he's just showing up once or twice a season because I find that completely hilarious how he does that. So Saxe is doing better now than what he did in life. He's really able to be covert, and I don't think he's done. I think we have to pay attention to what he potentially does in the finale as far as how many letters he really got sent out. I really think this is the tip of the iceberg. But he did say something to Jenny that I think might be a little ominous. He told her to forget about the white whale. And essentially that means, the Captain Ahab Moby Dick dynamic. Moby Dick was the one that ended up being Captain Ahab's ruin. And I think he's telling Jenny the same thing. You got to let this Rico go. It goes beyond our capabilities and law enforcement. Just let them destroy each other. Let Tariq and all them, eventually everything will fall. We don't have to put ourselves in danger anymore. You see what happened to me. She's not trying to hear that because she feels a lot of guilt about Saxe losing his life, and she's even more determined to see this all the way through. So I can already just tell you it's going to blow up in her face. We already just know that she's not going to succeed. Tariq is not going to get locked up. I don't think she's going to get anybody because everything is resting on Lauren. And Lauren, her emotions are really conflicted. She doesn't completely trust them because she's locked away. And Tariq has been working on her for these last couple episodes to get as much information as he can. Eventually, she's going to break at some point. She still has that naive feelings of wanting to trust Tariq or seeing good in him. And that's going to break the whole Rico apart. And the case is going to collapse and she's going to look like a fool. The only way that she can get around that is playing dirty. And I don't think, at least at this point, she's capable of taking it there yet. Maybe Blanca, if Jenny gets taken out as far as taking off the case, I can see Blanca being willing to play a little bit dirty. But as long as Jenny's in the lead, she's going to continue to try and do things by the book, and it's not going to work out in her favor. So I already know that case that Rico is just as good as dead, especially hinging on Lauren and Effie of all people. Now let's go to Tariq. Tariq was very busy this entire episode. I kind of touched on what happened with the kids and everything, and Diana finding the Whitman case file and confronting Monet. That all happened from the confrontation that happened the uh, in the bedroom, where Diana laid out her emotions to Tariq. So Diana doesn't have any love for him at this point because she knows where she stands with him. But let's start with the fight that he had with Kane. And I said last episode recap, that I hope they did it appropriately and that if they got in a fight, Tariq should get washed, which he did. He got thrown around a little bit, didn't get beat too bad, but it was clear who was the person in charge. I really like that whole dynamic. When Tariq said that line, to Kane about, you really want to beat me, nigga, I understand. I thought Kane was going to throw the first punch, but Kane kept it cool and he flipped it back on Tariq about his whole relationship with Effie. That's another indicator that he still has a lot of feelings there because it wasn't just an ego thing, just the whole idea of Kane being the one to pick Effie up and make her feel loved again. You see, when Kane was saying all that, that's when the punch came. So we know that there's still feelings there with Effie, and I'm still maintaining that that's his Tasha figure. That's the one that kind of sees him completely for who he is, the dark side and the facade of being. I don't want to say that Tariq looks at himself as a good guy, but just the facade that he puts on for mainstream society to seem like he's legit. You know, Effie's the only one that sees all of that because that's a mirror image of her, So in a way, they kind of deserve each other. But that whole fight was, interrupted very quickly by Davis going there, But it was a really comedic moment. I don't think that's the last time we're going to see them throw hands or maybe throw bullets at each other. That might be the next stage if things keep going the way they are. But Tariq, he was able to get a lot done. The main thing I feel is letting Brayden know what type of game he is, because Brayden has one foot in, one foot out. Anytime things get a little bit too difficult, he wants to cower away, especially now that it's come to his doorstep, this whole situation with the Ponzi scheme and Weston Holdings. He wants to get out of it now that his family is getting touched. And Tariq tells him point blank, no, we're in this. This is the other side of the game. Almost like if you saw The Wire, what Avon and Stringer was going through, and Avon was telling Stringer, this ain't your business class. This is the other side of the game that needs to be handled. And that's exactly what Tariq was telling Brayden that, yeah, we were running the business course correct and all that, but now that that's falling apart, now work has to be put in. Now your uncle is compromising everyone. He has to go. I know that's your uncle, but no, this is business. This is the other side of the game that we signed up for. And he's imparting that on Brayden. And I think Brayden knows deep down that he's correct, but he also knows if he takes his next step, there is no going back. And he brings up something that I think that Tariq has always been trying to put away or acting like people aren't aware that he killed his father, that he killed Ghost. As soon as he mentioned that, he's still denying it to people when it's obvious to everyone what's happened. And he feels like he can uphold this facade. And it's like, no, we know that dark side that's in you. And I think there's a little bit of fear that Brayden has as well, because he's like, if you can do that to your own father, you can literally kill anybody, if you can be that cold. And Brayden does not want to go down that path of being that merciless. But he has no choice at this point. This is what you signed up for. You out here hustling drugs. At some point, work has to be put in. And he puts in work when he takes out his uncle Lucas. Lucas made it easy for him because Lucas kind of doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut. So ragging down his friends, calling Tariq and everybody just your ghetto friends, saying that I'm going to take you down with them and I'm going to get off scot-free because I do white collar crimes and I'm better than all of you. That was just too much for Brayden. Shoves Lucas off the roof appropriately and kills him. So that's going to blow up another potential RICO witness for Jenny in the trial. And Brayden did the right thing, but now we're going to see how is it going to change him. I don't see him overnight turning into Tariq, but it's going to be a gradual process, especially because it wasn't somebody that he actually cared about. Lucas made it clear what he felt about him, what he felt about his father, and that his whole family, essentially besides him, was expendable. So I don't see Brayden having any tears over this, but we'll see how he mentally processes taking a life and whether he's going to be able to build on that in the finale and then the season to come, season 4. So something to keep an eye on. But Tariq planted the seed, and now he has a real running partner, as I talked about before, with Effie being his potential Tasha. Now, at this point, now that Brayden has dropped somebody, this can really be his version of Tommy at this point, because now we know that Brayden can put the work in. So we're going to see that develop even more, I believe, in season 4. The next thing would be this whole dynamic with RSJ and Tate. That was really interesting. I really thought that he got one over on Tate when he told him that Weston was legit. Tate wasn't trying to hear any of that. That kind of blew up the whole Ponzi scheme with the SEC. So now RSJ is looking at Tariq to fix it because his name and his money is tied all up in that. So now we're going to see where this goes. Now that Lucas is out the picture, I'm wondering how RSJ is going to be looking at Tariq. Is he going to be looking at this situation as resolved? Or maybe he's going to feel like, hey, I need to put my chips in with Tate because Tariq isn't reliable. And how is Tariq going to respond now that he knows he's been betrayed by Tate? Because remember, the person did say, the whistleblower to Tate, that if you know, actually Harper said it to him, that if you do this, it's very dangerous. So now I'm thinking Tate might be in the crosshairs of someone. I'm not sure who it's going to be yet. I don't know. Maybe Monet comes into the picture and threatens him. But I do think that that was a signal point that the writers of the episode put in to let us know that Tate is going to get roped in some type of way where he's going to be in some type of physical danger, if not in the finale, then early in season 4. I think that about covers everyone. Jam-packed episode, a lot of stuff went on. Oh, how can I forget the ending portion of the episode? Probably the most important thing. I mentioned Tommy earlier, the reappearance of Tommy to take out Tasha after getting the information, his own letter, apparently from Monet of all people. So he gets there. Of course, Tariq is conveniently there. Tommy takes out all the guards, has his gun on Tasha. Tariq jumps in, pulls his own gun on Tommy, says, I'm not going to let you kill my mother. There's a little standoff. Tommy gets distracted for a minute because another guard comes in, kills the guard, puts his gun back. Tariq should have shot him at that point, but Tariq gets knocked out by somebody that's behind him. Now, to me, that's very clear who it was. It had to be Tasha. She's the only one standing behind him. uh, Tariq wakes up in the hospital. His mom is gone, doesn't know what happened with Tommy. There's no body. His other sister is gone. The only bodies there are the DEA agents. So now, where's Tasha? Has she been kidnapped? What's going on? We don't know. Very big cliffhanger for the episode or for the series finale that's going to be airing officially next week. But I think just speculating, I don't know if there's some type of agreement going on with Tasha and Tommy. I would say no, because if there was, he wouldn't have pulled a gun on her like that. But we are going to have to find out what was the motivation for her to knock her own son out. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get some clarification on that. I hope it's not a cliffhanger that runs into the beginning of season 4. But that's kind of threw me for a loop. I know she wasn't enthusiastic about potentially killing Tommy, but I know she's tired of having him going after her constantly. So there's going to have to be some type of reconciliation moment or some type of understanding to stop this. And she must have some type of evidence she feels that can call Tommy off, and she's going to risk taking out her son, which was the only person standing between her and the bullet with Tommy. So we'll see how that gets resolved in the finale. Very soapish, soap opera-ish, the way that ended, but we're all tied in with power now. We know how it goes. So as far as the finale goes, I'm looking to see, we're probably going to get an appearance from Noma. How is Tariq going to resolve that situation? He did get a little bit of time, as we mentioned, because of Obi, talking to Obi and saying he can get green cards for his family. So is Obi going to get more in the back pocket of Tariq? I didn't see that coming. I thought that Noma was going to actually take Obi out for going too hard on Tariq and company. So that's something to keep in mind. Is Effie going to get out of prison? That's another dynamic. Is Diana going to push further against her own mother, or is she going to be more focused now on Tariq, being that he scorned her? Is Lauren finally going to blow up the Rico, which I'm thinking she probably will? All that is going to be answered in the finale. Tune in next week. If you can't wait until next week, obviously it's online. If you're looking for it, you may have already seen it. But if not, I'll be recapping it officially next week, immediately after the episode airs. And also keep in mind, I will have a special guest from the cast of Power that we're going to be talking about after the episode airs, talking about the episode in full with us. And fingers crossed, if things work out, I may have a second member from the cast talking about the episode with me as well. So can't reveal it yet because it's still all in motion, but just keep tuned here, subscribe, and like if you enjoy this podcast recap. And I will reveal that information as soon as possible on the cast member that will be joining me to talk about the season finale, excuse me, next week, immediately after the episode airs at midnight. So roughly around, let's say 12:55, 1 a.m. Eastern time. All right, thanks for tuning in. Let me know what you think about this episode. Any disappointments, anything that you enjoyed. What are you looking for in the season finale? And also, if you've seen the finale, you can let me know what you think about it. It's already out there. So thank you for tuning in and looking forward to seeing you guys next week as I talk with the cast member recapping the season 3 finale. Take care.